Welcome back to the Tailosive EV podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, we are joined again with Rivian Mike, rockin' Compass Yellow. How are you today?
Doing well. How about you, Drew?
I'm great. I have a Rivian shirt as well, just the logo fell off, but this is which blue is it called?
I think it's called Rivian Blue, to be honest.
Oh, that's a unique, creative title.
I mean, what else would you call it? Compass Yellow's already taken, so you can't do Compass Blue? Is there even
Ocean Blue or something? No,
what
they
is
have Ocean Coast, which has yet to be made. They haven't built any Ocean Coast interiors, which
Have they done Forest?
I think they've done some forest greens, yeah. I think I saw someone take delivery of one, but I didn't realize how lucky we were at the First Mile event. There was a Rivian with the Ocean Coast, and I got briefly some video of it, but if I would have known how limited that option would have been, I would have spent some more time with it because it looks really nice in the videos and stuff. Mm-hmm. So we're just celebrating Rivian this week because of their delivery goal.
Yeah, very fantastic news for people who have stock, but I guess people like us who are very big fans of Rivian. RJ announced recently, I guess we're maybe a little bit late on this, but they announced that they produced, I think, over 4.4 thousand vehicles in Q2, which RJ said that they're on track to reach their yearly goal, which is very promising and exciting because it seems like they've been a little bit radio silent on numbers per se.
They have, yeah.
In regards to like how well they're manufacturing these vehicles. It's great to hear that they're making progress and you can kind of see that the gears aren't really grinding anymore. They're starting to mesh. And even though there's not really I don't think there's really any gears in this car, is there?
There's gear guard.
Oh, there is gear guard, but I don't think the Yeti's going to be doing anything with this.
Yeah.
But it is, it's exciting. I'm very, it makes it more of a promising car company to invest in if you're thinking about either buying one or investing in them in stock or in any other way supporting them, that they're going to be around for at least the rest of the year.
I think a couple years with their current burn rate and cash on hand, even if they didn't bring in any money, they have enough cash to last 2 or 3 years, I think. Maybe more now that they've got more revenue to acquire. But one metric that I just wanted to highlight was 4,400 vehicles produced. And they also had a over 4,000 delivery run rate as well, I believe, which is a good sign because last quarter it was like we built this many, but we delivered this many. And there was a big gap between those two, which was a little bit scary for some people. And I didn't mention that in my last stream, but some people were like, what's going on? Like, why are you holding on to so many? And now I think we have evidence that it's because it was just, obviously it takes time to complete the delivery and the deliveries were trailing production. But I feel like the start of that S-curve has begun because their cumulative total since they started production, which was last year, it was a while ago, is under 8,000 still, which means that more than half of all Rivians built were built in Q2, which is pretty impressive to think like, wow, they're this doubling effect is continuing. And they're doing all the right stuff, you know? Like, I love the product. I love the design, and I love the practicality. My only issue was the price, but I understand why the price is so high. All electric trucks are going for crazy amounts, but I was like, I want to see them move on the Adventure Network, and now they're doing that. They've launched the first fast charging Rivian locations, and they're already at work. Rivian Forums on Twitter is who I follow, and they've been posting updates on here's in Massachusetts where the next one is going in, and at the first one they had installed, Out of Spec was there. Kyle from Out of Spec got to be the first ever to plug in to a Rivian fast charger, and they have a pull through stall as well, which I thought was awesome. Thank you, RJ.
Yeah, that's at least awesome. Being a little bit more transparent as well, so that way not just Rivian employees know, and you kind of hear word of mouth. That's a little bit more announced. It seems like we're getting a whole lot more news from CEOs of companies instead of press releases or news sites reporting on this from some source or from their media, or at least from their reporters talking to the company directly. Instead, it's just the CEO jumping on Twitter saying, oh, yeah, 4,400 vehicles produced this quarter. We're on track. See you guys later.
That's all you need. Skip the whole PR thing. Skip the whole marketing event or whatever, press event or whatever. Just tweet it out as you find out. Get the news out there. That's the way to do it.
Indeed. So that's pretty exciting. I have seen a lot of R1Ts in the area, in the Bay Area, a lot more, which
that's good.
Is always exciting. It's always I'm very much, or me and my wife are very much the Leonardo DiCaprio gif of him pointing at the TV or whatever. Maybe it's just a still image.
That's me too.
Yeah, every single time we're on the road, even when I'm just driving home, and it's just it's been a long, boring day, nothing interesting, and then a silver granite R1T goes the other way. I'm like, ooh,
yeah. Yeah, there's some around where I live, not probably as frequently as for you, but I know of at least one because it parks in the same place. So whenever I go on this one road in my town, I always look at that parking space now. I'm like, that's where the Rivian parked. And then we saw, I think, one on the way to the airport dropping off my father-in-law. So it's definitely more special, and it reminds me of what it used to be like to spot a Tesla on the road. Back when I was first growing up, if you saw a Model S or something, it was like, oh, there's one. Now, it's like seeing a Civic. You know, you're like, ugh, where's mine? You know, like, come on, let's move on with it. I'm not like, unfortunately, I'm not super wowed or impressed anymore by seeing any Tesla, refreshed S or X or Plaid, because it's just become such a common thing now. It's lost its wow factor. Rivian is still in this startup era where it feels special and it feels cool to spot one, but I'm looking forward to the day where Rivians become boring to spot. You know, I was just imagining, like, you know, in the days where you used to be able to like order a Tesla and get it within a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Rivian will ever get there, or will it just forever be like you gotta wait a year or so before it's ready?
I think we're now stuck in this regime for most car companies where you're gonna have to wait a couple months to a year to see your car, especially with Rivian, with the amount of demand that they have, because, well, they're catering to that side of the market that wants adventure / pickup trucks, and people are willing to wait. You don't really see a lot of people holding off on their order. You see a whole lot more people just putting in an order, and they're like, that's fine, I can wait, which kind of makes sense, right? Because then you kind of have a goal in mind, kind of like what you had, where you're like, all right, we're going to start with this Tesla fund, and then you put in the order. Right. I guess you put in the order a little bit later, but at least you had some buffer time to build up funds. In this way, like, you're kind of committing artificially, right? Because you're putting in this artificial goal / date of like, okay, it's going to take 2 years to get this car. Let's see if we can rack up enough funds to purchase this ar at that time, or if we're going to have to do a loan or something like that. But worst case scenario, we'll have, or we're going to try to have enough money for it. And this reservation is kind of that pushing factor of like, we put down the money, even if it's refundable or not. Now it's time to actually own up and try to earn the mass amounts of money needed to get these incredible vehicles. So I don't think we'll necessarily ever see Rivians be in that sort of regime of you put in an order and then 2 or 3 weeks later you get it. Unless you're in an area where someone canceled their delivery and you're actively looking for that specific vehicle. And
oh, true. They do have a shop. Have you heard about that?
Yes.
You see which ones are like in stock or in inventory, but not anybody can buy from that. I think you have to have a reservation down to be offered to check out the shop, and that's how certain people have been able to get delivery so quickly, is because they're willing to take like whatever spec. They don't care about the color and rims and stuff. But
yeah, I only say this because that's how I got my Y. Oh,
that's right. Yeah,
I called fully expecting just give me a 3 because I know that those probably are available, but the Ys are very new and we've had our reservation for a while, but you guys probably haven't made it. And they were like, no, we haven't, but we've got this one. And
this one's here.
The owner just canceled, and we're fine with giving it to you because we haven't found someone else yet. So I'm sure that'll probably happen to a lot of other people, not just with having a shop, which is great for those who want to get their Rivian sooner and have a reservation already for something close to that
Yeah.
spec. But to at least give the opportunity to someone who is willing to pay out maybe a little bit more or
Hmm.
do the extra work to seek out that vehicle, where others kind of just sit back and wait for 2 years, which not their fault,
Hmm.
but
No, that's fair.
sometimes you
It's
have to
kind of
wait.
like I was kind of comparing it to saying it's a binned model. Like they build a version that may not have great quality control or may have problems, minor problems, and they offer it to the customer, and then the customer says, "Oh, this is unacceptable. I don't want it." So that one becomes available in the shop, and then they say, "Hey, who wants this one?" And if someone is willing to put up with the compromises and say like, you might have to take it to a service center later, you might have to put up with quality control problems,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. You're buying like a binned one to help accelerate delivery. It's unlike binned processors in the computer market. It's more about accelerating delivery instead of lowering your price, because you won't get one at a discount because of bad quality control, but you will get it sooner. So yeah, I could see demand still outpacing supply for many years to come, because I think that Rivian, like Tesla, will still experience that butts in seats thing, where the
Hmm.
more people that have them, the more people will become aware of them and start to realize they exist and that they're pretty awesome. And even if they cost more than a regular pickup truck, it's worth it to more and more people. So still, I love the concept that you'd be able to just be like, you know what, I feel like a Rivian, order one, and then a couple days go by and it's ready. That idea still sounds amazing, but
We're
probably not
close
going
in
to happen.
regards to those circumstances, but otherwise, yeah, it's never going to be that
Hmm.
realistic, kind of like how it was with Model 3s and S's back in the day, where
Hmm.
you're able to hit a button in a few weeks, there's your car. But
Yeah,
uh,
it's a weird product purchasing process, or anything purchasing process is usually not this much of a time commitment. Like
no,
I'm checking my estimated delivery every day because
I don't blame you.
it's impacting a lot of our plans. And I'm like, well, when do you want to go? And I'm like, well, when does that car become available? Like it's going to cost us one thing if we go with gas versus another if we can wait longer. And I'm excited because this is the closest we've ever been. Right now, estimated delivery is August 7th, and it's July 8th. So I'm like, under a month, finally. But that probably means nothing. Like I've checked most people on Reddit, and they said like, if you don't have a VIN, the estimated delivery is pointless. Like they'll just keep pushing it back indefinitely. So they haven't texted me or anything, or assigned me a VIN. So it's probably nothing, but it gives me hope. But I was thinking like the whole process of buying my house went from I found the listing on Zillow to I'm moving in like 30 days,
Hmm.
maybe 40 days, because there was a little bit of time to negotiate the price, and then there was escrow. But it's like you go from not knowing where you're going to live to you are now living there in the span of less than 2 months.
Hmm.
Whereas, and that's a big purchase, a home buy is a big deal, and that impacts your life and everything. But this dang car is like a year long. For some people, it's like a multi-year long process of just like, okay, which one do I want? All right, let's get that one. Let's put a deposit down, and now we wait for like a year or 2 years, or for some Rivian owners, like 3 years for this thing to deliver. I can't think, like, phones don't work that way, laptops don't work that way. Um, like I can't compare it to anything. Like it's I don't know anything else that is this big a purchase process that takes this long. And probably what makes it such a big deal is it's not like pre-ordering, I don't know, special equipment or camera gear that's not out yet. It's like you're buying something that you see all the time. I see Model 3s every day. It's not a surprise or a special thing. I'm just like, yeah, there's my car. Yeah. Oh, they've got it too. Yep, he's got it too. So it's like something you see and interact with on a daily basis that exists, and yet you still have to wait months and months and months. It's killing me. I'm like, there's
Hmm.
no other waiting process I can compare this to in my life.
It's very frustrating. I agree, and
Yeah.
that was something that I experienced briefly with the Model Y when I saw him rolling around in February of 2020. I thought,
Right.
just give me my car. I know it's there.
Yes.
I see people with their deliveries driving around. Give me my car.
Yep.
And I live in the Bay where like you're not supposed to see too many, or there's not usually.
Sure.
I mean, okay. I live in the Bay where you see a lot, but at that time,
Yeah.
you wouldn't expect to see a lot, and I still saw like a handful, and
Yep.
that was very frustrating. But seeing it everywhere, I mean, I see your car every day when I drive to work.
Oh, I know. Me
And
too.
all
I
different.
see it too.
I see it in white on white. I'm like, okay, well, there goes Drew's car again.
By the way, your car is incredibly popular. I just call it. There's my every time we see a midnight silver metallic Model Y with the 20-inch wheels, I'm always just like, "There's Mike." We just say Mike is everywhere. We saw it in Hawaii. We saw it here. We just drive it around. Everyone buys that trim. It's very. They're all inspired by you because you were the first person, obviously, to get that model.
I made it popular. They saw me and they're like, I want to be like Mike.
Right.
Like Mike.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, I see him too, and I still do the same thing probably as you and Louise do. I point him like, hey, it's me. It's my car. Come back.
I'll be honest. Where I live, I say I see my car. I'm really just referring to a white 3. I haven't found that many rear-wheel drive white-on-white Model 3s, though. I'm actually surprised by how little in my area that's an option. I guess it's because people are either getting the rear-wheel drive because they want the cheapest possible Model 3, or they're getting the white interior because they're getting a long range or a performance and it's more money anyway, so what's the 1,000? At least in my area, I haven't found that many, because sometimes I'll see the white on white, and I'm like, oh, cool, and then it says dual motor, and I'm like, it's not me, though.
I didn't realize until this morning, but the delivery dates slipped again for the Model 3.
Oh, they did?
At least for something
Recently?
that I noticed, yeah. If you wanted to get a Performance 3, you're waiting until like August, which is, I guess, a month
Wow.
from now. At the earliest, I
that's
should say. August at the earliest. And then for the all-wheel drive, you're waiting until September. And then for the rear-wheel drive, that's slipped to October. So you have the hot
Really?
commodity right now.
Is that with white interior, or
Let me
have a
check.
certain wheel selected? Because
So-
that'll change delivery, too.
I noticed with both rims, regardless, basically white exterior, black interior. So like the basic,
cheap one.
the
Yeah.
most basic you can go. It was still the same for both the aero wheels and the sport rims. Now, if you make it a white interior, it's still the same. August, September, October. So
Oh, interesting.
you now have the hot commodity of Teslas, which makes sense because it's the most cheapest version, and people are realizing it's okay to get this one because maybe they don't need to drive around that much. Or
Right.
maybe word's getting out from the community, who is the advertising force for Tesla, that you
That's
can
us.
charge this
Yep.
one up to 100% without damaging it, which I don't think that's necessarily the biggest selling point for the car. But I definitely
No,
think
I feel
it
like
is.
most people don't know that.
No,
Anyway.
but I do think it's a factor. So
It is, or at least it should be in your purchasing decision. Like the range difference is not as drastic as people think it is. Essentially, like 350 versus 270 sounds like a big deal until you realize that 350 range is just at 100% for that first year, which you'll probably never hit, and then after like 2 years of ownership, it's definitely not going to be 350. It's probably going to be more like 330, and you're still charging it to 80% every day. So it's I'm not saying it's not worth getting the long range, but the differences I think are not as major as people think. But I did check out Troy Teslike. He has like a crowdsourced spreadsheet of everybody's orders that someone linked me to recently, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. You can like track when people ordered and what they ordered, and it's updated daily. Like I just happened to get the link to it yesterday, and there was still like 5 or 6 orders just that day, and I had to scroll back a while to be like, okay, let me see what the status is of other people that ordered a Model 3. This was all Model 3s, no Ys or anything. I was like, what's the status for the Model 3 of people who ordered on March 2nd like I did? And on March 2nd, I think there were like 6 or 7 orders, and it was something like 4 of them were long range, and 3 of them were standard range, or rear wheel drive, whatever. And none of the standard ranges had been delivered,
Wow.
but all the long ranges had. So that little spreadsheet tool was kind of useful because it gives me some perspective on which orders are being prioritized, which is not a shock. It's not a big surprise. Tesla's prioritizing the higher priced vehicles. I mean, we can even see that on the website. The performance model you can get next month, the cheapest option, you're probably going to get pushed several months back. But I was like, okay, so everybody else who ordered a standard range on the same day as I did, none of them have gotten the car yet. So that made me feel a little bit less alone. I was like, okay, other people are facing the same issues I am. It's like if you want a cheaper Tesla, you gotta be willing to wait. But it's impressive because they've still kept the price the same after the last round of price hikes. The Model 3 long range and performance and everything else went up except the rear wheel drive. So maybe there's just not that many people ordering it, but if that's the case, they feel comfortable pushing it, I guess.
Who knows?
You can wait.
I do know that I think a little update from last week, I was talking about how my mother and her Subaru experience has been a dread. And
Oh, right.
earlier this week,
Yep.
she contacted me saying, how do I get a Tesla as quick as possible? I'm like, well, you could check the existing orders, but those are like 2018 and 2019 models that don't really have the best odometer, or I guess mileage and range. Where if
I've been checking it daily, by the way.
yeah, I did too this week just to make sure that there isn't any other options for my mother since Subaru has finally cracked her. She's very much like, I don't want to deal with these people anymore because she's dealt with them for I think 27 years now, and she's been
Dealing with dealers.
yeah, she's tired of dealing with dealers, and there's literally a known fault with her car where it's unsafe to drive. It's screaming at her when she's driving. It isn't showing her things. I mean, this isn't really a safety issue, but she can't call people through the car anymore. She now has to actually pick up the phone, and even sometimes the phone is connected to the car, but the car won't allow it, so she can't even contact anyone while she's driving, which I guess is kind of safe, but unless she needs to, I don't know. Anyways,
If someone makes a phone call while you're driving, that could be a problem.
but yeah,
Now you got to deal with the phone.
this is a known issue, and Subaru said it's okay, just drive it. We'll push out a software update eventually to fix it, which I thought was just insane to give.
Do they have over-the-air updates?
No.
I was going to say, how are they going to do that? They're going to make you come back to the dealer with a flash drive.
I don't know who she was talking to, but they didn't know what they were talking about, and they're also letting my mother go drive a car that was unsafe, and she knew that as
that's
well.
messed up.
She's like, I'm not driving it. She still has the company car that they gave her,
Uh-huh.
the little loaner, and she's like, I'm not letting go of this until either you fix my car or you give me a new car, because this is dangerous to drive. So
Right.
she's now fed up with them. She's trying to figure out how to get a 3 the quickest way possible, and a 3 would be cool, but she's usually that like Outback crossover, or not crossover,
Sure.
cross
I
track
get that.
type of driver. So something
Yeah.
like a Y is definitely the ride height that she's looking for, but
Sure.
it won't be the same range that she gets in her car or her Outback, where with a dual motor all-wheel drive 3 gets you around, I think with the air,
350?
yeah, I think
max?
it's 358 is what they say EPA estimated or whatever.
In
So
the best possible scenarios for the first week. And then
yeah,
it'll trickle down.
so probably like 330 or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Is a little bit more of the range that she'd like, but we're still trying to figure it out.
She doesn't want the, what's it called? Was it the Forester?
She doesn't like the Forester.
I don't think anyone does.
I would actually. We have a friend who, her and her mother both own Foresters and love them. In which I'm like,
okay.
Good for you guys. The Forester, the
That's the
Crosstrek.
all-electric one, right?
No, the.
Oh, sorry.
You're thinking
I
about
was
the
thinking of something
Solterra.
else.
The Solterra is
Solterra, that's what it was.
yeah. The
Okay.
was it the Crosstrek, the Outback, and the Forester are Subaru's crossover /wagon/SUVs
Okay.
that are all kind of becoming a very similar look now. They're all
Yeah.
they're converging into the same car, which is disappointing because the Crosstrek was always a little bit more shorter. The Outback was a little bit more of a wagon, and the Forester was a very
Oh, I see.
taller and longer
Yeah.
version of the Outback. And then I think they added the Ascent, which is more of like a maybe not Chevy Tahoe size, but something in that range. Anyways,
I
enough
see.
about gas cars, but
Yeah, I thought maybe she'd want a Solterra since that's still a Subaru but electric, but I
no.
don't recommend it either.
I've recommended other cars to her too, like the Kia EV6 or the Hyundai Ioniq 5, and she very much was like, "No, I don't trust them. I'd rather get a Tesla if I'm going to get an electric car." So it kind of
Well,
goes to show that a lot of
fair
people
enough.
recognize Tesla as the best option on the market, but are very upset with how long you have to wait to get the best option, which I think that's a fair trade-off in this day and age where if there's that much demand to where the supply can't match it, then it shows how much of value that product has.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's very disappointing from Subaru, and I do hope that more people can get their cars quicker, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But I don't really see that happening until I don't know, until either more options come out and people are willing to not necessarily downgrade, but look for other options that can do what they want, or
Good compromises.
yeah, good compromises, or other things like the charging networks get a little bit better, so that it's not necessarily superchargers are everywhere and there's no EV Go or Electrify America anywhere, but that there's an equal amount of charging stops wherever you go. Something that I saw online that I think I just linked to you was the Kilowatts posted a while back about some next generation 350 kilowatt chargers in, I think, Baker, California, which I thought was really neat.
From Electrify America.
Yeah, and apparently Tesla has some mega packs fueling them, which
Right.
was really interesting. But what I really like about it is that their pull-through charger is kind of like a regular. It looks like a gas station.
Oh.
It's got a really big
Okay.
overhang. It's got solar on it, so that you're shaded while you're charging. But it's also a pull-through, so it's a lot more welcoming towards trailer drivers. Which
Oh yeah.
I think if Tesla's not going to do that, if Electrify America takes up that space, I fully welcome it, because
Yeah.
the dawn of EV trucks is occurring, and a lot more people are going to be towing with their trucks and their crossovers and SUV EVs, and it only makes sense to offer that, or at least start that ramp up.
Yeah,
Though,
I wish Tesla would do more about it. I'm sure there's no doubt in my mind that it costs way more to do that whole solar roof for the shade and everything, and then the pull throughs, because it takes a lot. It takes up a lot more space to do pull throughs compared to just plopping down some stalls at a parking lot, because you can just prefabricate those and drop them off, and that, so it's kind of a difficult battle, because on one hand you're like, you should design them so that they're more accessible and better for towing, and also provide shade, and you can have the renewable energy right there. But at the same time, you have people saying there's not enough and you need to ramp up faster. So Tesla's mindset is probably, well, let's figure out ways to reduce cost, and let's find ways to ramp up superchargers and deploy them quicker. So using the efficient and compact design of just having parking spaces in a parking lot that act as superchargers, I get the appeal to that from the business side, even though there's now these Electrify America stations with all these fast charging and solar and everything. It's just, I guess I hope they can find a good way to cater to both, because I don't think one or the other needs to be the mainstream. If you started saying like all superchargers need to be pull through and all superchargers need to have solar roofs right above them, it would drastically slow down the rollout, because it would take more time to construct and it would cost more. So either the spending has to go way up, and I don't know if the permits become more complicated if you're taking up that much space in a parking lot. It might not, but there's both need to be addressed, and I guess it's good that Electrify America is moving on that, because I do think seeing them use Tesla Megapack proves that this is not a who is better. It's not a competition of who can build the better network. It's just like, no, we're all on the same page. Tesla wants their chargers to be open. EA is okay with Tesla's charging there. Um, Permitted you have the right adapter. It's just a matter of getting those adapters out there. But it's like they're on the same team. So it's good to see that since Tesla hasn't taken much action on the pull-through stations, that EA is stepping it up there. That's a good sign. I think a great way to address it would be if the mega charger network, which they haven't really moved much on, but that's what the semis are going to need anyway. Finding the most popular routes, you don't want to put mega chargers in the middle of nowhere, rural areas. You want to find out, like, okay, where are all of the towing EVs going, and let's build mega chargers, and then also have a way for either the Cybertruck or at least vehicles that tow are able to pull through and charge there. It
Sure.
could maybe be at a premium, so you don't have like random Model 3s showing up to mega chargers. They're like, hey, I can charge here too. It's like, no, only charge here if, yeah, only charge here if you really need it. But I think it's a problem nonetheless that needs to be addressed. So
Sure. And
Yeah,
to clarify, this is in this that we're talking about is Baker, California, which
Yes.
is out in the middle of nowhere, I think in Death Valley. So this makes more sense as a pull through for people who are towing and going long distances, because this is out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, Baker,
Right.
it has a community around it, but there's not much out there. So
It's a stop.
yeah,
It's not
it's
a
like Nevada.
destination.
Nevada's got plenty of land everywhere, and in Baker they've probably got the same circumstance going on. So it only makes sense that availability to go a little bit bigger on the charging location is viable or a lot more logical. But there are places on road trips that I've taken where it makes sense. Yeah, just put a mega charger or supercharger at this pit stop where you'd go to the
Sure.
bathroom and look at a map, stretch your legs and all that. Because I saw a lot of that when I was traveling all the way to Minnesota and back. What was that? Back in 2021. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I guess last year. I guess maybe around this time
Feels
last
a
year.
long time ago.
It seems like forever ago. Years go by quick, but they also seem like long ago at the same time. Anyways,
Not quick enough.
I'd say, yeah, many people kind of like, I was looking while you were discussing, when we were discussing how long it takes for people to get these cars, especially Rivians. I was looking at my referral list to see if anyone else is left on the list. And I think Jason, I don't know if you're a listener of the podcast, you're still on my list, still awaiting your delivery. It says that you've ordered. And
When did he order?
I think it said August.
Does it say?
Ordered
Wow, so it's been
August
nearly a
9th.
year ago.
Yeah, August 9th, 2021, it says
Wow.
ordered. And he's the last one. Everyone else has either canceled or had theirs delivered. But
Oh, okay.
I find it interesting that
Interesting.
he's still on this list. I don't know whether he's canceled and that just didn't reflect on my end, or if he's honestly waiting for a car for a year now, whether it's a Model S or X, which I guess
I found
makes
out-
sense.
Yeah, it could be if it's an X. I've heard people have been waiting like 2 years for that. But I found out about a friend who had ordered a Model Y that ordered a year ago, and he still hasn't gotten it. So he's been pushed back several times. Which it'd be one thing if the delivery numbers were going down, but they're still
They're
having
still climbing.
highest production ever, and yet there's still these pushbacks. It's quite incredible the market we're in. But
It's insane.
how do you feel? Because we were talking about this earlier in the week, and I don't remember if I grasped your opinion on it. But what do you think is the best solution to address the charge port thing? Because we were talking about Electrify America, and they're ramping up and building lots of 350 kilowatt charge stations, and Tesla's ramping up at the same time. But we've got, in the U.S. at least, these conflicting connectors. Are you in favor of, like, let's just rip the Band-Aid and everyone switch to CCS or adapters, or what?
Maybe along the lines of that. I wouldn't say necessarily ripping the Band-Aid off that quickly, because we as humans have it's been demonstrated many, many times in many different ways that humans don't like change, or at least rapid change. We're very much
True.
gradual, slow change, both reflected in politics, in EVs, in many other facets, even with toothbrushes. I know a lot of people who are like, why would I get an electric toothbrush? This regular manual one works. So at least with this charge port situation, I think my opinion on CHAdeMO, they should just go away, or at least help out with CCS.
I think that goes without saying.
Yeah, that
CHAdeMO die.
I'm okay with CHAdeMO dying. They're only,
Yeah.
from all I know, which I could be severely missing a bunch of other vehicles on the list that CHAdeMO supports or is in. All I know is that the Leaf has it, or at least prior Leafs have it. I don't know if current Leafs have it. Again,
That's what I heard as well.
I still need to do my research, but you could easily switch the Leaf over to CCS, and there would be it wouldn't be an issue. There's not like a billion Leaves out there, and
no, they're not high volume. So
no, and there's already enough adapters out there as well.
True.
For at least CHAdeMO to CCS or J1772, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
For Tesla to switch over to CCS, or for CCS to switch over to Tesla, that's tough. I know, or what we've seen with like companies like Bollinger or Aptera, who have asked Tesla, can we get this charger? And either they go unanswered or they go unanswered, because I don't think Tesla will ever publicly say no.
Right.
It's a little bit harder to sell other companies on the Tesla plug. And that would come with a lot of issues with trying to get those licensings out, and also not that much support necessarily from those heads who want to work with Elon. Where Tesla's already making CCS ports on their cars elsewhere, in outside the US. So I think it'd be a whole lot easier, or maybe if everyone needs to switch to one plug, which I think is a really good idea, because that's what we do with gas. It's all the same port, just you have to put in the right octane.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Yeah, but at least which we kind of have that already with CCS. You either have the regular J1772 port, or you have the underneath high voltage.
How much ethanol is in this charger?
Yeah. So I think Tesla switching over to CCS makes sense. In terms of timing, that's the question. I think Tesla could maybe do something, or take a page out of the United States government book and say by 2030 or 2040, we expect to start converting our superchargers, or at least all the cars that we produce, from this old plug to this new plug, in which the new plug would just be CCS. I'm in full support of that. As long as you still continue to provide services for those that have the old port. Because we know that taking my car and many other people's cars, and I guess everyone who owns a Tesla in the United States, to take those back into the factory, or at least take them into shops to get that retrofit, would cost Tesla a crazy amount of money. I don't think it could be on the same order as the bolts and their battery changes that GM had to do.
Probably more.
Yeah.
Just because there's so many Teslas. It's like 75% market share in the US, and there's more superchargers than EA stations and stuff. So it's like the retrofits on that would be insane. It would take forever.
Indeed. So I think a better option, which I think is what's kind of going on at least, is with the adoption of other vehicles that are non-Teslas into the supercharging network coming up probably in the next year or so. I would think the idea of adding another port onto the Tesla supercharger station, or stall, is a better idea. So that way, if you have a CCS port, you plug it in. And if you have a Tesla port, you plug it in. So then that way, Tesla could easily switch to CCS, and there's not a problem, because they're already offering CCS for other vehicles. That's the more, I think, not just logical, but the smoothest progression I could think of right now that I could probably see realistically happening. Uh,
I
just
think my only issue with it is just that there's still going to be thousands of superchargers that don't have the CCS port. So if you started making Teslas with CCS, then you could be like, okay, can I go here? Yeah, there's a supercharger, but which port do you have? You know, it could make things worse for Tesla owners that are confused by that. So
Sure, which is where adding the adapter to the shop, or at least what they used to do, I don't know if they do that, or no, I'm pretty sure they don't do this anymore. Adding the adapter to the charging cable bag that you get with the car, which is what I got with mine.
yeah.
I got a J1772 adapter,
Right.
so I can put that on a charge point or anything else and plug in my
Slower
car,
charger, yeah.
and it's no big deal. But now I don't think they offer that. So
You don't
reintroducing
even
that.
get a normal connector.
Yeah, so reintroducing that would be a good idea for newer vehicles that come with a CCS port from Tesla to have some backward compatibility so that way they can go to a supercharger and be able to plug in. But again, that's another cost. So it's more of a they're kind of in the mud either way. If they stick with the
Yeah.
port, then we're still going to have this duopoly of ports in the United States, which isn't the best case, where Europe and other countries have already figured it out. But
We're too late on that standard. We should have agreed on one a lot earlier, and the fact that we haven't sucks. And like you said, it's not ideal, but there's not a easy, simple way to reverse it.
we're too far into the weeds.
Right. Because on one hand, you could say, well, it's just Tesla and everybody else is using CCS, but you got to combat that with, well, there's more Tesla owners than anybody else. So that impacts the majority of EV buyers because Tesla is the majority of EV buyers. That impacts the largest charging network. So it's not as black and white as a Lightning versus USB-C argument to me, because that's one where it's like, okay, you're already using Type-C. You can easily include an adapter and switch everything over to Type-C for the iPhone. And the iPhone market share globally is not as high as Android. So I think even in the US, it's split down the middle. I think it's like 55 or 60%, whereas Tesla's a even greater percentage than that and account for so many of the chargers. So I think my answer is still just going to be like, it's going to suck, but I think we're just going to have adapters, because even if you acknowledge that, like, okay, in 2030 we're going to switch to CCS, I think people would be upset because they're like, well, why are you, if you know you're going to switch to it anyway, why build it now? Isn't that just creating more work for yourself down the road? So I think luckily most charging will be done from home, so you'll have one connector there and you don't have to worry about what connector do I use it, because you're just going to have the one. So I think that will help streamline it, that you won't have to go to a charge station likely as often as you have to go to a gas station. And just like how there's different levels of octane, like you said, or the diesel pump versus the gasoline pump, there's a little bit of planning, but people will adapt. And I don't think it'll be an annoying factor, but I don't think it will prevent people from buying one.
No.
If they all use the same port, I'll switch. But until then, no.
We can already see there's people clamoring to get EVs, and it's not because they're easy to plug in. It's because gas is too dang expensive, and people are willing to deal with the headaches of trying to figure out where to plug in, than to go to your gas station down the street and pay $6 a gallon or something like that, in which is what we do. So
right.
We don't
I think
care
we
at
could
this
even
point.
get to the point where like every charger has the necessary equipment.
That'd be
That
nice.
would almost be an easier mandate. Just say like every charger has a Tesla connector and a CCS connector. And you go to Electrify America, you go to Superchargers, wherever, you just pick the one that your car has. I could see that turning into the norm. In
Basically,
the future, just
European
because-
Union move of you're going to supply this whether you like it or not.
Kinda, yeah.
And Apple's like, but we're a private, or I guess they're a public company, but more of just like, but we don't want to do that. It's like, this is the law. You have to follow it. And
Right.
doing that in America would it seem a little bit extreme. I'd see a lot of pushback from many sides, but
Yeah.
it's not a bad idea just to say, hey, EA, play nice with Tesla. You now have to supply a Tesla port, which means Tesla, you have to be okay with that. There's no backing out of this. But then Tesla, you also have to do the same with EA. Start supplying CCS.
Right.
So
It could be everybody put your guns down. Let's figure this out. They even had a plot point about it. I don't know if you've ever seen Black Mirror, but there's an episode in the I forget which season, but it's called Nosedive with Bryce Dallas Howard, and she's stuck with this like cross country trip, and it takes place in the future or whatever. Everything's futuristic, so all the cars are electric in that episode, and she gets this rental car, and she has to stop at a charging point, and the connector doesn't work, so she's like, oh wait, this one doesn't, how does it happen? So she has to go up to the desk and ask for an adapter, and he's like, no, I can't help you. So she's like stranded, and she has to like hitchhike because she didn't have the right charge port. So I feel like the government, I'm with you. I don't think the government needs to get involved in things they don't need to get involved in, and they should just let the free market do what it wants. But there's certain things where the government steps in, and wanting to prevent that type of scenario where someone is stranded because of a port design, where they're like, I'm at a charger, I have an EV, the range is low, but I can't charge because we didn't agree on a port. That I get why a government wants to be like, oh, okay, let's mandate this. Let's make sure that scenario doesn't happen. That's kind of where you need a non-business form of power to step in and say, here's how it works. Kind of like the FCC with radio frequencies and that kind of thing. If that was all free game, it would be a giant mess. So
yeah,
I can kind of get them wanting to be involved there. I don't think I would go as far as to say as they should mandate it so that every car needs CCS on the charge port, because that would basically just be a big kick to the pants to Tesla. Let's just say, you have to pay this bill. But knowing our current administration, maybe they would do that.
maybe. But Tesla has shown that they are showing that they're more than happy to supply CCS to their cars.
Yes.
In places other than the United States.
Right.
It's just more of the annoyance of, we've got this dialed in, we've already made this port, we've done so much with this port, and it can achieve pretty good speeds. I'm sure the CCS one can achieve great speeds overseas as well. But to just kill it off just because everyone's like, you need to have a unified port, and Tesla's like, but this is the best port and it's the most popular. And then
this is what most people are using. They could use that argument.
Yeah.
So you don't have the majority rules. Only if every EV was of equal market share could you say, yes, Tesla's the minority. But we're not there yet. Everyone's fighting over the tiny sliver Tesla doesn't have. So
exactly.
That's why we're stuck here. But I get it sucks. A lot of people just coming into the EV space are annoyed by that. They're like, what? Why can't we just agree? And I'm like, yeah, it's weird. It's one of those things you just got to get used to.
But stuff like Tesla adopting CCS ports or opening up superchargers to non-EVs is something that will bring a whole lot more people in, which isn't really a problem right now because we already have droves and droves of people trying to get electric cars of all different types.
Yeah.
But for at least my wife and I, the only reason why we're not jumping on another EV is because we see the value in the supercharging network. And if we wanted to get another EV, which would probably be an R1S, in the case that we decided to have kids, or at least if we didn't want to have kids, just have a whole bunch of dogs or whatever. It makes sense to get an R1S. And the only reason why we would jump for it immediately is if an announcement took place of, you can now charge Rivians at a Tesla supercharger through an adapter, which then we'd probably immediately that day put in an order for an R1S and then also an adapter for the R1S to a supercharger. And then we'd probably be sitting there for 2 years with this adapter doing nothing. But it'd be the reminder of, yes, we're getting this eventually. But that's what's stopping us. So it's a reality that we're living in. It's just there's ways around it, or at least people are willing to either wait or compromise or not compromise. I guess there's
Yeah.
many different stances that you could easily take in this electric vehicle space of standing your ground or taking the plunge and going a different route.
Yeah, the good news is that if as long as you can charge from home, it shouldn't be that common of a scenario anyway. It should just be a road trip annoyance, not a daily annoyance, like going to the gas station is. But that brings up my next question: would you have an R1S and a Model Y, or would you replace the Model Y, or
That's a really tough question.
if you did?
So
Because I was like, they're both kind of in this close to the same genre. One's more of a full size SUV, one's more of a crossover, but still, they're both kind of no bed, electric, fast. You know.
So that opens up something that I've been thinking about, which I'll let you and the audience in on what's been going on in my head. Is I have an Aptera on order. It would be nice to get the Aptera, and every day I still try to convince the wife to go for it. It's a refundable reservation that we have, so there's no harm in keeping it. Besides the fact that it's kind of a shallow promise that we'll get it in the future. It makes more logical sense in the vehicle lineup that we have with a Ram 1500 that tows our horses and all the other things that we need for our home. It can get all the things from Home Depot easily. So that vehicle's justified in us keeping it. The Model Y makes sense because I need a daily driver to get to work, and it serves as kind of a smaller version SUV that can carry a whole bunch of stuff. Like yesterday, I went and grabbed a whole bunch of supplies for a project that I'm working on in the garden. And so it was nice to fill that up with everything that I needed. But for something
and it's cheaper because it's electric and everything.
Yeah. Where an Aptera, it makes more sense as the extreme case of this is the third vehicle in our lineup where there will always be one vehicle probably sitting at home, in this case because there's only two people, me and my wife. Yeah. But it would make sense to have the Aptera so that because I drive a decent distance to work, this is our money saver and it charges itself and
almost nothing to drive it.
Yeah, and we don't.
Pretty cool.
There's usually just me and the wife in the car. So for those who focus on cars and the annoying factor of the average amount of people in a car is like 1.5 or whatever.
It's pretty low. Yeah,
it's pretty low. So it doesn't make sense for me to drive this car that has 5 seats technically in it, and I'm only occupying one. It would cater to that mindset of the Aptera only has 2 seats. The wife and I are the only people that usually sit in these cars. So it makes sense for most cases, the Aptera could take over for that. And even for some long distance trips, we could get by with an Aptera. We don't need that much cargo space. We just need space for 2 dogs. And that the Aptera it seems like it can cater for that. To go the other route instead of the Aptera existing in that space, or maybe it can, but to introduce the R1S, that's not necessarily replacing the Ram because we still need the truck for towing, and the R1S can tow. It's just not going to have the range that we want, which is a bummer because it kind of goes back to your stream the other day of long distance cars that they're possible, or EVs, towing, I should say. Yeah, they are possible with the technology that we have right now. It's just there's no financial reason to do it currently besides Lucid's approach of it's luxury because we can do it because it's a metric that we can show off, but otherwise we're losing money on the deal. So to replace the Ram with the R1S doesn't make sense. So we'd probably have the Ram and then the R1S, and then your earlier question, would it replace the Y? I would not want to get rid of the Y. I love the Y. The Y is...
You like having at least one Tesla available.
Yeah. Well, it's a great car. I've loved it for 2 years straight, and for the couple of rim rashes I've given it recently, which killed me, I still love it regardless, and it's still that car that I walked out to on the road in the pandemic that appeared there, and I got to drive it around and enjoy it for the day, and we drove everywhere around the bay. there's so many great memories with it, and I don't think I would ever get rid of it unless there's a logical reason to get rid of it. And I don't think the Rivian R1S. I don't think it's. I don't think that vehicle is maybe special. I don't know, because there's something, like you said, you see your car everywhere, but there's something special to the car that you walk out to your driveway and see, and you're like, "That's my car." So maybe there'd be something like that with the Rivian R1S, but it's tougher with the Model Y because that was the first EV that we got, and we got at a very specific time, and it replaced a car that was very dear to me, being the Volvo 940 wagon. That was a fantastic vehicle. Love that car. But to replace the Y with the Rivian, that'd be tough. That'd be a very tough call. I think we'd probably bite the bullet and try to hold on to those three vehicles, the Ram, the Y, and then introduce the R1S to the lineup. And then I guess I don't know where we would park it.
I know. I was thinking, like, so in what scenario do you grab the R1S instead of the Model Y?
That is the scenario. I guess
close to each other.
the real, yeah, I don't know. It's the realization that we don't need, I don't know, because the gas guzzler is the one that you'd want to get rid of, being the Ram, but you can't can't replace it because it's got the towing, so it has to be the Y. But I guess it'd be the circumstance where I find myself driving the Rivian more than the Y. But in this hypothetical fantasy land, I would probably see my wife driving the Rivian R1S more because she already drives the truck to work. So the R1S would be replacing that. And would it save us money? Yes. Would it save us as much money as getting a different or another Y or a 3 or an Aptera?
You have the gas guzzler, and then you'd have the electron guzzler.
Yeah.
Because the R1S is going to use a lot more power per mile than the Y would. So
exactly. So it's not a financially viable solution unless you have that need of, we have a whole bunch of dogs that we cart around, which is a very silly excuse. The more logical excuse is we have 2 or 3 kids that or I guess a kid and then a bunch of their friends that we always drive around. That's when it makes more sense because we need that space. Like there's an inherent need to have this electron guzzler. But I don't know. I think the way it'd play out in my head is we would try to keep all 3 vehicles, and then if it's more of, does it work out or is the sacrifice necessary to keep the Y, or I guess sacrifice on the space and keep the Y and then sell the Rivian R1S, which then makes it silly in the first place that we're talking about getting an R1S.
You probably could flip it, but
yeah, you can flip it too,
if you
and then buy another one.
I have one ordered yet, but I think I figured out the situation.
Okay.
I think I know what you have to do.
All right. Tell me, please.
Project Gravity.
No!
Only because, for one, Lucid is gonna. This is a stupid idea, but it's gonna make sense once you hear it. Lucid has the most efficient powertrain on the market. They've developed these ultra compact, the high voltage architecture. It would probably get better efficiency than an R1S, but or it would at least consume less power at the same spec. But the difference is Lucid has this bizarre need to have high range numbers. So to me, that increases the likelihood, I don't know what they've said about it, but that increases the likelihood that the Project Gravity SUV will get over 400 miles of range. Because, with the Lucid Air, they targeted like 500, and then the lower tiers go over 400. So I thought maybe, I don't know if they've talked about range for the Project Gravity, but the big hurdle we're trying to get over with your use case is we need an electric vehicle that's good at towing. And basically, whatever you buy, it's probably going to have a decent powertrain and lots of acceleration. So it's not a matter of finding something that can handle the weight. It's a matter of the distance. So it's really just who's going to build the EV with the largest battery pack and the most efficient powertrain. So you would have this hyper luxury SUV to tow your horses in. And the range gets cut in half, right? So if it was like a 400-mile range, you could go like 200 miles, which might be close to what the Ram gets, except, of course, this would be consuming a lot less energy per mile. You might even get 3 years of Electrify America charging, which, as we discovered earlier, Electrify America is working on pull-through stations with the fast charging capability that we know Lucid supports, and you'll be able to stop on more long-distance trips. It's just a matter of, I guess, fronting the bill on the because I'm sure the Gravity's going to cost a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe you could compare it to like what the Rivian would have cost, and then compare how much you're paying for gas in the Ram, and then instead of gas bill, convert it to loan payments, because those would be eventually those would end, whereas the gas bill is infinite. Oil changes and brake pad, that kind of bill is ended. So maybe R1S money plus your Ram money put together towards a Project Gravity down payment, and then.
So you're telling me to reserve an R1S today?
No.
So that I can buy a Project Gravity later.
No. I want to see their website again. I'm curious now, because I was like, if they said something like with 300 miles of range, then
I don't know if they've said anything specifically, but what I think of is the cheapest Lucid you could get right now, which just got a price increase, is the Lucid Air Pure, which I think starts at like 90K or 85K or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was around there.
Somewhere around there, which is expensive, and I guess for the base price that we got the Ram, which was around 30 to 40K, to somehow justify one of the most expensive EVs on the market, and I guess EV brand, what am I trying to say? One of the most expensive EV brand made cars. My brain isn't working. Anyways, Lucid makes very expensive cars. This is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, they do.
Lucid makes very expensive cars, and they're only making the sedan. For them to go to the SUV, yeah, a lot of people are going to buy it because it's going to be interesting, but it's going to cost one heck of a sum of money.
Yeah.
And
you're probably right.
I'm sure it'll be able to tow the amount that we need for the horses, because there's a certain golden number that we look for in most cars, or I guess most.
And there's a lot of horsepower. Horsepower to move horses.
That's how it goes. The horses.
There's a ton of torque in those powertrains.
The horses add to the horsepower. I guess the only thing that I'd have to say is the Project Gravity, whatever it's going to be called in the end, which maybe it will just be the Lucid Gravity, which would be neat.
Yeah.
It would have to look good. And that's what the R1S is for my wife, is it looks like a really awesome SUV. Its style's neat. Yes. Its features are cool. The things you can do with it, the space it has, and the towing it can do are all pretty awesome. And the range is the only iffy factor. It's great for like driving around city or taking trips around, but to use it as towing isn't the most ideal. So this thing would have to look really killer, like on the same level, or maybe one tick below the R1S, and have really good range and come at a price that makes sense, which I don't think is going to happen. I don't think
it's not likely.
The Gravity's never going to make sense.
To give you some glimmers of hope here, I Googled it. For those who don't know, Google is this cool website. No, I'm kidding.
I think I've seen them.
The Lucid.
I've seen them around in the Bay Area. They're cool up and coming
startup. Right?
Yeah.
Apparently, Jenkins, someone from Lucid.
Thanks, Jenkins.
Leroy Jenkins. No.
Leroy!
They said that the Lucid Air with 100, I don't know why they said 13, but with 113 kilowatt-hour pack, on the what's it called, Grand Touring, they can achieve up to 520 miles of range. They said with that same battery pack, they could probably get around 450 miles on the Gravity, and Jenkins, whoever they were, said that it's at least going to be over 400 on the Gravity. So there will be. The more I think about it, right? Because on the Rivian configurator, the R1S is not. You're not able to get that with the Max Pack, right?
You can't even get the Max Pack. They've delayed that with the standard pack, so you can't even get the Max Pack. Right. You can only get the large pack. Well,
even on the Visualize, I remember when you could configure, there was an option to select Max Pack, and now, obviously that made that different. But even when you could configure the R1S, I never once saw the Max Pack as an option.
No.
So what I'm trying to say is, as far as like full-size electric SUVs go, Gravity might be the only one that goes over 400 miles, which normally I'm the kind of guy that says, who cares if it goes over 400 miles or not? It's at least with the Lucid Air, it's a sedan, and as long as you've got the fast charging capability and a decent charging network, which they do, it's just extra batteries to be hauling around. Okay, it's cool that you can go over 500. That's impressive, but you could get 300 miles with a much smaller battery pack and improve your efficiency, plus help your ramp up and not. But with Gravity, it's more likely that someone would be towing with it because it's an SUV and it's going to store more cargo, and it's going to be used by more families and have more of a utility focus. So the likelihood of it being a great towing machine, based on the fact that it might be the only 400-mile range option at the time, because I guess the Silverado might be out by then.
Yeah, we're keeping our eyes out for Ram's upcoming EV truck. We're hoping to see something from it.
They said that would be, 500 miles or 400?
I think they said 400. They're aiming for 400, which is a good metric, but still, we would. The golden number that we see is the one that Tesla said, which is 500 plus miles of range. And that gives you a decent amount of overhead for towing. But
that's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Shrek. Yeah. So it
would be cool.
I think at this point we've accepted that our Ram is going nowhere. It's staying with us for probably at least the next 5 years, because we don't see any EV trucks that are coming in at a decent price range that we got for ours, which makes sense. Because of the demand for EV vehicles in general, but for an EV truck is definitely greater. But to somehow get an EV truck that can do the same things as ours with decent towing range is going to propel the price tag up to basically 100K. And could we pay for that? We could.
You got to factor in the cost of ownership of the gas Ram too.
Exactly, but we don't, because of this $6 a gallon fiasco going on in the Bay. We're not really driving the truck around unless necessary. So it's only when the wife needs to go to work, because that's necessary. Could we carpool? Yeah, but I think that puts too much of a wrench in both of our plans for carpooling. So we're willing to shelve out some of the money for her to take the truck around. But to replace it with an EV truck that costs upward of 100K, that's tough, because we could financially stretch to go for it, but is it worth it doing that stretch? And that's why there's so much scrutiny on the Rivians for us. Is they're really cool, but it'd have to do this if we're going to replace the truck. Which is why if we ever got the chance to own an R1T or R1S, it makes more sense in the current space that we're at right now to just use it as a third vehicle. It would be the fun vehicle to take to work with you, so that way we don't have to take the gas guzzler and then go on adventures with.
Sure.
It's not the end-all be-all replacement of what we need a truck to be.
The Ram would just become the towing vehicle.
It just becomes the thing sitting in the shed in the back of the property or wherever it's going to be sitting, I guess, on the sidewalk or whatever. Sitting there collecting dust while the beautiful EVs sit in the garage and are well cared for. And the truck's just like, when am I going to get started up again? Uh, so that's
Okay.
that's what we struggle with. You've gotten me somehow more excited about the Gravity, but thinking about how much.
It's not going to be cheap, though. We
No,
know
I mean I
that.
just think about how much the S costs versus the X, in which it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
too crazy of an amount, but it's a decent amount. Like I think it's like $25,000 to $35,000 or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So to do that with, like, let's just say the Grand Touring Lucid, which costs about I think 130, 140.
Yep.
Bring that
Hmm.
up 20 or 30,000, so it's like 150 or something like that.
They're
That
not going for high volume.
they're already not going for high volume. Yeah, you're right, and
Yeah.
that's pushing our budget way beyond its limits at 150.
Okay.
100's
Yeah.
possible. It's gonna suck for us
Okay.
because I'm sure you
Yeah,
could
it
do
would suck.
something similar. It's just it would
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are possible. They're just not financially responsible.
you're you're just literally living off of all the grass growing in your backyard or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I could stop investing in my retirement accounts and I could pull out all my Roth IRAs and afford this. But that doesn't mean it's a good idea. It's not
No.
that it's impossible. But okay, I'll change my answer a little bit based on
Okay.
what I've heard. I think your best bet, and I'll explain why, is going to be the Chevy Silverado
Oh.
because that one is reasonably close. It's not. It's. I think. What did they say it was coming out? Did they say next year?
Yeah, I think it's next year around spring/summer.
Okay, so we have about a year to go before the Silverado. I feel comfortable saying that. It's from an established automaker.
Good
So
old Chevy
they're
who had
more-
exploding batteries.
Right. Exactly. This is who I'm recommending. But because it's GM, the same company that makes the Bolt that they gladly sell at a loss, I think there's a higher likelihood that because Chevy is not a startup, they will sell the Silverado at a pretty reasonable price because they're not trying to make a profit with this thing. I think with the Silverado, they're just trying to make a good impression. They're going to be trying to prove to people Ultium batteries are amazing and we led. You did it, Mary. And they're going to be like, we make really good electric pickup trucks. And the Hummer is its own thing. I keep realizing in videos when I talk about electric trucks, I keep saying, all there really is the Lightning and the Rivian. I keep forgetting the Hummer because that shouldn't count anyway. It's like over 9,000 pounds. And,
Over
the
9,000.
the fuel economy is worse than most Priuses, despite not using gas. It's just so dang inefficient, and they're building it at such low volume anyway that it's like shouldn't even count it. But the Silverado, I think, is gonna be like the GM equivalent of the F-150 Lightning. You know, they start selling these things with no intention on them being profitable. They're just trying to make a good impression and say, see, we can build EVs. And they love to brag about the pricing like they do with the Bolt. $26,000. We care about affordability. Meanwhile, all the cash is burning and they've got a lot of government support. But the big difference between the Lightning and the Silverado is the Silverado is targeting, I think, a 400-mile range.
Yes, and
So-
to clarify, it's coming out in fall of 2023, so a little bit later than what we previously
okay.
said, but
A
gives
little
them more
over
time.
a year, but it should be before the Gravity.
Yeah,
Gravity
I think many
is
things are
currently
coming up
saying
before the Gravity.
2024, I think, is what the website says. They pushed it back. It was going to be 2023. Now they pushed it back. But they're a startup, so they're getting things off the ground. I understand that. With the Silverado, though, they've spotted it road testing already.
yeah. I saw the article 2 days ago.
It's got a nice big frunk. It's got a mid-gate, which, as you know, is my favorite pickup truck feature as a non-pickup truck owner. Drew will love anything with a mid-gate. Oh my god! Look, the second row folds down.
This golf cart has a
I'm
mid-gate.
I'm actually really excited for the mid-gate on the Model 3 because our little second row that folds down on the Sonata is really crappy. But I've seen videos of the second row fold down on the Model 3, and I was like, oh, that we could sleep in the back and that kind of thing. I love mid-gates. And the Silverado has that. It's going to have the high range, and I think it will. it's obviously going to be cheaper than the Gravity. It's more so a
No.
discussion of how much is that 400-mile range variant going to be, because they're very elusive with the pricing on the Silverado. They're not very clear on it.
Mm-hmm.
All they've said is it will start at 40,000, but that doesn't really mean anything because the work version is going to be 40,000, and we have no clue what the range is on that. I have a very hard time believing they would sell a vehicle with a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack for like $40,000. I think even for GM, that would be too much. But if I'm wrong, oh my God, that will be the steal of the century. Like, that will be an incredible value. I don't think that's going to happen, so please don't assume that will. But if I had to guess, I would say, to make it seem cost competitive or something, the Silverado truck EV will be around 80 or 90,000 for the 400-mile range variant, and you'll get, rear wheel steering, Super Cruise, big bed, big trunk, and you can trade in your Ram or sell it, because used vehicles are selling at higher prices now too. So that kind of helps offset the upgrade, and then of course less gas to pay for. I think, given the timeline on that and the likelihood of GM losing money on it, that's my best recommendation at this point.
I was looking at the interior while you're discussing that and thinking about what's it called, Apple CarPlay 2.0, and how good that would look on the Silverado, because Chevy supports Android Auto and CarPlay. So to see
they support CarPlay now, yeah.
To see CarPlay 2.0, yeah, what did I say? CarPlay 2.0.
I said CarPay, but that's
they support CarPlay, definitely.
They'll take your money.
They'll take your money, but it wouldn't be a bad interface on this, except for the weird knob in the I guess top left of the center screen. It's going to be like a Ford scenario with some weird dial there, but
okay.
It wouldn't look bad. I don't know. That's a tough sell, especially with I don't know. It kind of leans back into what my wife thought, because back in the day when my wife and I just first met, and she told me to get into cars and all that just because she wanted to talk cars with me back when you were in diapers. No, back I think back in 2014 or 13.
Oh yeah. I was just a teenager.
Oh yeah, us too. But we were talking about trucks, because that's all you do in a little podunk town, and you got nothing else to talk about really. And so we talked about all the different brands of trucks, and this is something that internal combustion engine people love to discuss, is the comparison between the Fords, the GMCs, the Silverados, and the Rams, and I guess the Toyotas. I guess Toyotas weren't really. It was the big three, right? You talk about the big three: the GM, Ford, and Ram, which was Dodge back at the time, and which one was better, which one was more reliable, and all that, and all had different trade-offs.
Sure.
Which I guess makes me think about the Silverado and how reliable it would be versus a Ford F-150 Lightning, which you can't even order it. You can't even order this Silverado either. You can reserve, but that's kind of it, though I guess that's one step better than the F-150 Lightning. But
yeah, you can't even do that with a Lightning.
Regardless, it's more of the fear of how reliable it is, kind of like the article that I think we both read earlier in the week about the gentleman who received his platinum F-150 Lightning. Only got to drive it like 200 miles, I think, right? Or not even that, maybe? I forget.
I think it was less. Yeah, it was like 2 days or something.
He only had it for long. 2 days, and then it had some software issue, and Ford took it back.
He took it to Ford, and they were like,
"We don't know.
I don't know,
but we'll take it."
They're like, "Yeah, that's weird. Sorry."
Which is
so there was nothing.
That's where they are unreliable. Mainly is their software. So it's something that I would question with what's going on GM's side and what the Silverado would potentially have, because they've proven with at least the Bolt that the software ain't bad. It's slow, but you could just attach CarPlay to it and it's okay. And there's not really any big software lockouts that I've heard from Bolts or even regular gas guzzling Chevys. Usually it's
all the ones that didn't blow up work great. That's the lesson to be learned.
As long as it didn't catch fire in your garage, it's a great car.
And they are building it now, so I think the battery issues have been resolved. But yeah, it just took
Yes.
them a little while.
But that is just that springs to mind from conversations back in the past to today is how reliable is this car, and or how reliable will this car be is the better question,
Right.
because
Right.
it's not out yet. But how reliable will it be? What things am I expecting, or at least like what are the trade-offs? Like,
Yes.
what am I sacrificing going with something like this? Yeah, it looks a little bit interesting with the interior. It's not my ideal one, just because
Nah, me neither.
at least what I've grown accustomed to with the Tesla is, of course, the amazing huge screen and all that. But at least with our truck, we don't even have a traditional digital display. We just have
Oh yeah.
little digital readout that you'd see in an old gas car of the radio. That's all we got. So it's not necessarily I don't know. It's not an inherent need, but I guess with the electrification of a truck, you'd want some more support with cameras and other things, which that's what Chevy does with their rear view mirror or center rear view mirrors. It's mainly just become a camera these days. So that it has that support, but just other stuff that you'd come to rely on or that you'd need. And there's stuff that you do need with the truck, and the traditional steering wheel is something that is more alluring than the Cybertruck's yoke. But
Yeah. Your wife would approve, I think.
she would. She's in the same camp as your wife is. The yoke is the silliest thing ever. It's maybe
My wife doesn't drive much, but she still hates the yoke.
she's entitled to her opinion, and I think everyone else
That's fair.
is entitled to their own opinion on whether they like a certain thing or not.
They are welcome to their wrong opinion.
Oh,
Sorry. I had to say it. I'm just weird that way, but
oh well. Jeez. Anyways,
I was looking at the website right now, and I just had a few specs to update you with.
for the Silverado, I was looking at some of that as well. With was it over 660 horsepower with the wide open watts, whatever that means.
What? I think they have that on the Hummer.
No, they have watts to freedom. I don't know what.
Oh, that's right.
I don't know what wide open watts is. Like, where are these terms?
That sounds wrong.
Just tell me what it does.
Watts a watts. That's what I'd call it.
Or how about just acceleration mode? I don't know.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Anyways,
or plaid. Or
you're gonna
ludicrous.
update on
So
specifics.
The RST is the real one people actually want. You know, the one that has
The real
color.
one.
I think the WT is what's coming first, and that's like a fleet vehicle.
Interesting.
So that's the one that's supposed to start at 40,000 and will likely only be available if you buy, like 10 of them or something. But the RST is available summer 2024. So we do have, I think, a bit longer than I originally thought. It might come out around the same time as Project Gravity. But the promising stat here, but at the same time, more time to save, right? You got more time to save up for it. The more promising stat is, okay, the WT starts at 40,000 with optional features, but future variations will offer MSRPs around 50 to 60, 70, 80,000. That's their listing on the website. They said the ballpark pricing for the other options will be in the ballpark of 50 to 80,000, which is not a super specific range, but I'm assuming the high range version is going to cost a lot. So
Sure.
Worst case scenario, it would be like an $80,000 to $90,000 truck, and no tax credit because it's GM. But factor in some gas savings, and the range on that one should be high. Hopefully, if I'm wrong, maybe it's more like the F-150 Lightning, and you can get like a XLT equivalent, and maybe it's like $60,000 or $70,000 for the boring interior but 400-mile range. If that's an option, I think it'll be the steal of the century, because I consider the Cybertruck a lost cause, because I'm completely sold on the idea that it's going to be $120,000 with a 300-mile range. So if long distance towing is your goal, it's not going to be great at it, at least at first.
Yeah.
And it's got, I don't think the full steering wheel will happen. I think it will have a yoke, so your wife won't appreciate that either.
Nope.
But the big difference is you can still reserve a Silverado. That's still, they're taking reservations for it. And just like how I think the Bolt is a really good value now and it undercuts the Teslas quite a bit, I think the Silverado might be in a similar position when it launches. Assuming you can get one without a crazy high dealer markup, but
Yeah,
there weren't.
hopefully they don't follow the same path, which I'm sure they would, because Chevy dealerships are notorious for this versus Ford.
Yeah.
Ford, at least,
That's true.
because that's the thing. Ford has seen what's been going on. They've sold. Well, I guess no. Chevy's in the same circumstance with Bolts, but people just accept that the Bolt is meh. But at least with Ford, they've been more in the limelight with the Mach-E and the F-150 Lightning in these markups. Chevy hasn't really had that much of a spotlight shown on them, but
Yes.
that's probably the biggest. That's the biggest worry, right? You can get a cheaper model or cheaper car with a legacy auto or legacy auto car maker,
Yeah.
but you're going through a dealer, and the dealer doesn't have your best interests in mind. They've got their own.
Correct.
Which, their business makes sense, but I don't think...
It's really stupid business.
I think I've told this before on the podcast. I never want to deal with a dealer ever again. So that's what makes it tough. The only reason why the wife and I are more interested in the Ram is we've had positive... or not positive circumstances, but positive... experiences. Yeah, positive experiences with Ram. Every time that we've gone to a Ram dealership, they've always been very welcoming. They've always offered a pretty decent price for what we're asking, and if we try pushing it lower, at least for us, they've gone for it, which was always a surprise to us because it's a big eye opener of like, whoa, you'll actually go down like $5,000 just because? We gave no justification. We just said, how about this? And they're like, sure. So...
Well, I can go lower.
Yeah, that's what our brain went through when we got the Ram. It's like, do we negotiate for something lower? Probably not.
You should start with a more insultingly low price next time.
So yeah, that was the tough thing is we got lucky with our Ram. Is it was a basically 2-year-old car sitting on the lot sitting on the lot for 2 years. Barely touched. Didn't have that many miles on it. Only went on like maybe a couple test rides. But it was mainly a neglected truck. And we quickly became the owners of it because we realized there's not going to be another deal like this ever. And we didn't even know what was coming in the future with the crazy used market inflating the way that it did. So we somehow avoided it amazingly. It would be like putting in $500,000 into Tesla back in 2017, and then it was basically somewhere around that equivalency. Maybe not exactly 1-to-1 with dollar amounts, but it felt like that. Now looking back,
I see.
So going back to the Silverado EV, it's a cool truck. It's got features related to the F-150 that are cool or neat, and others that are practical, like the midgate
or the rear wheel steering,
and the being able to step up, which I guess the Ford kind of does something like that, but the way that Chevy, or I guess GM does in general, I like a little bit more, with a little bit more of that type of stair step. But anyways, it's a neat car, but the dealerships are definitely something that we want to avoid. And with something like this, with GM knowing that they can earn a quick buck on it, or at least, GM knows that they'll... Dealers can earn a very quick buck on this. That's the big X factor for the car.
Yep. Yeah.
For as cool as it is and all the capability it's got and the range that it advertises, it'll be neat, but again, dealers just need to die. That's my humble opinion.
There you have it.
I have no regrets.
Mike wishing death upon thousands of people.
No, not on people, on dealerships.
Just the dealership, not dealer.
Yeah, get rid of that dealership. That ship has been sailing for too long.
The ship has sailed.
Let's fire the cannon.
Needs to start sailing. Alrighty. I think that's fair. I can understand why you want to wait for the Dodge Ram. I hope we get. Did they say when that's coming out or being unveiled at least? I know they've teased it.
End of year, I think, is when it gets unveiled. From what I
Okay.
recollect, I know that all
That should
this
be
year
exciting.
they're showing teaser images on their site, so you're able to discern what it's kind of going to look like, and it looks similar to what the Chevy Silverado's aiming for, just with different front fascia. But that's something that we're looking forward to. I guess I would turn the question back on you, Drew.
Oh, me.
What would you
What about me?
Would you get the Silverado over the F-150 Lightning? Because we know on the podcast that you are a big proponent, big supporter, which I still have to buy you that F-150 hat or whatever,
Oh yeah.
of the F-150 Lightning. But would the Silverado not tide you over, but at least coerce you over to that side of automotive if you were to get a truck, even though that we know that you don't need a truck?
Yeah, I think yeah. I mean, they have the same starting price, so that gives a big advantage to the like base model. I don't know how easy it's going to be to buy that $40,000 model, but it will likely have decent or at least better range than what Ford's rocking, and as long as there's a way to get me a midgate, that's going to be more interesting to me. I don't know if rear wheel steering is standard. It might not be. So I guess like yes with a asterisk, right? That was your big
With the
aha moment last week.
oh yeah,
Tesla's competition has caught up.
just like Silverado has with the wide open Watts asterisk.
Yeah.
You also have this
Right.
asterisk for this car.
Right. Yeah, I need to see more exact specs. Like once the F-150 Lightning configurator went live, it became a lot more obvious. Okay, this is what you get with the Pro. This is what you get with the high trim. And Chevy has been very vague. All they've said is like 400-mile range, starts at 40 grand, but there are options that cost 80 grand or more. And some of these things like the midgate or whatever are not standard, and some are missing these features. So it's like I don't know what comes with what. If it ends up being no rear wheel steering, no midgate, and 220-mile range for the $40,000 option, I'll be like, it's not that much better than the Lightning, or it's really not worth it over the Lightning. But if it turns out to include a lot of those features for 50,000, 60,000, yeah, I could. I think it's a very possible scenario that once it's out and once we know more about the configurations, I would prefer that to a Lightning. But they gotta give me a little bit more info first before I officially say that would be my pickup truck of choice. That's the funny thing. On so many of my Cybertruck videos, people are like, "So you just want more time to save for it." And I was like, I'm not getting one. I've never reserved a Cybertruck, and I have no intention on getting a Cybertruck.
No.
I said if I needed a truck, I would get a Lightning. I've said that on the record multiple times. And now I'm saying on the record, if I needed a crossover, I would get the EV6 before I got the Model Y, just because it's so much cheaper.
I still need to
same
test drive
reason
that.
for the pickup.
I still want to get in
Yes,
that
we
car,
do.
and we need to schedule something. Just because
We do. We've got a lot of things I want to test drive. I would hate to have to drive my gas car in order to make the test drive happen.
If
So,
there's some
I
available
think
in your
I'll-
area, I'm willing to shell out the electron money, I guess.
I am checking. There's none really that close to me, so that makes it annoying.
We'll figure
But,
something out.
We'll try. Yeah, we got to make time for it. I think I'd be willing to make longer drives once I get the Model 3. Plus, I'll have the Model 3 to compare it to. I can drive with the Tesla for a while and then try out something else and be like, oh, see, this I don't like. But
I made a mistake.
right
Oh
now-
no.
Yeah. Honestly, I kind of felt that way with the EV6 a little bit, but not enough to cancel or anything. But like, right now, if I compare any new car to my Hyundai, I will say this is the best car ever. So I need to compare the Model 3 to the Kia because those are more similar pricing. So I'll have a more fresh or fair perspective. Because right now I'll get in the EV6 and be like, wow, a display! That's amazing! I love this car. It has air conditioning. That's amazing.
It can play music reliably. What?
Yeah,
It has
there's so many
Bluetooth?
advantages. It doesn't run gas. I could live with this. That's probably how I'd feel with the Bolt if I tried it. I'd be like, wow, no gas. I'll take one. But
This thing
I gotta
steers
become a
reliably.
Tesla schnob.
Wow.
I need to become a Tesla schnob, and then I'll review everything else.
Sure.
So it's more evenly matched. All right,
Makes sense
last
to me.
thoughts, closing opinions?
None besides I'm looking at the gallery for a Ram again, and I'm now more and more interested in what this thing is going to
That'll be
be.
interesting.
Yeah. But that's all I
I'm
got.
excited.
Me too.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you all for tuning in to this week's electric truck pickup truck. Electric truck picker, our new podcast. And we hope you have an excellent rest of your week. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.